Hello and good morning to our listeners from around the world. My name is Brian Wesley Johnson, and welcome again to another edition of This Morning with Soulivity. I'm so glad that you're here with us because I have two very special people to me, very special friends and co hosts, Candace Harper and Tammy Gaines, with me. Good morning, ladies.
Good
Good
morning.
morning. Morning, good morning.
Oh man, so much to talk about. But before we get started, I want to once again remind our listeners out in the universe to ask questions, comment, post right directly to our YouTube chat and Facebook chat because we want to hear what you think about what we're talking about today. This is an interactive discussion, and these are real conversations that we want to empower you every single day. So why don't we get started? Um, Ladies, last night I was getting the latest on the encounter with Memphis police and Tyree Nichols. I'm sure that you are both familiar with that case, correct?
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah. Why don't I start? We can dive into this because I really want to talk about this morning with you. I want to first kind of give out some factual information to people so that they understand what's going on, what's this about, and then they can join in as well with their own thoughts and feelings. So, Tyree Nichols, a 29-year-old black man, died January 10th, several days after an encounter with Memphis, Tennessee police officers during a routine traffic stop near his mother's house. According to Nichols' family and their attorneys, an independent autopsy revealed that he had suffered extensive bleeding caused by a severe beating and that he died from that trauma. The five officers involved were fired for their actions. Now, the latest news is that these officers are now indicted on charges including murder and kidnapping filed by the Shelby County District Attorney. Now, investigations by state and federal authorities is still ongoing. And additionally, today, actually on Friday, January 27th, the video of the incident will be released by the city. It is stated that the video itself is horrific, and this was stated by the current Memphis police chief. Um, Woo! I
Yeah.
got feels for this, y'all. I got feels for this. The officers in question were all black. Just want to put that out there. The person who died was black, and Tammy, I know this is something that you wanted to talk about today, and I was totally down for it because I had my own thoughts and feelings about it. But I'll go to both of you first. Just your reaction this week.
Uh, um, I guess I had a couple of reactions, and then I had some self-awareness last night.
Mhm.
So obviously, when we hear this, let me speak for myself. When I heard this, I was like, not again. Like, not another
Right, right,
young black man struck
right.
down in the prime of his life. I believe he had just moved to Memphis to start like a
Yes,
new life,
yes.
and this is so tragic. It's tragic on so many levels. But I have sons and I have brothers. I have a dad. I
Hmm.
have uncles. Like every
Hmm.
time I hear this, I get a little bit. I just get a moment of panic, and it's a
Right.
shame. I taught my son when he was, he got. I took him to get his license on the way home. I was like, listen, if you ever get pulled over, yes sir, no sir.
Hmm.
If they, if they tell you to get out the car, start the video rolling.
Right.
Like, what kind of world do we live in now that thank God everybody has cell phones with cameras so you could videotape?
Right.
Uh,
Mhm.
but yeah, when I heard the news, I called my son because I just wanted to hear his voice. But there was a part of me also that was a little bit numb.
Hmm.
And I like yes, last night I was like, am I becoming desensitized to this because it happens so frequently?
Right.
Mhm.
And it happens and nothing changes.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I definitely had a moment of like, what's wrong with me? Like, I should be more upset about this.
Hmm.
But there's a part
Hmm.
of me that's like socially exhausted.
Mhm.
Like,
Wow.
how many people have to get killed at the hands of cops for something to change?
Right.
Yeah.
Like, even if you think about George Floyd, all those protests, painting the street down in Washington, D.C., Black Lives Matters, nothing changed.
Right. Right.
Mm.
Not a thing. All
Right.
those people around the world that gave their voice to support, George Floyd and his family and what happened, not a single thing changed. So yeah, I think I'm a little bit socially exhausted. I got whiplash. I have
Yeah.
whiplash.
Yeah.
Wow. Candace, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, because I think it's twofold. So, you think about personally, I have 6 nephews who are, amazing young men of color who are up to great things and all have good hearts and are contributions to society. And I think about if anything like this were to happen to them, how I would just be ready to just fight. Like I would be ready to
Right.
Mhm.
kill somebody, right?
Mhm.
Right.
And
Mhm.
those are my nephews. Those aren't even my direct children, but I by proxy. There's that part of it, and then the other part of it is, that overwhelming sense that we live in a country that was predicated and built on supremacy and violence, and that all of this is just the aftermath of it. And I like in the grand scheme of things, like you wonder if it's ever going to evolve
Mhm.
or uh, if it's ever going to have any sort of um, conscious awakening, like a complete conscious awakening, or if this is just part of our human experience. And if it is, just how do we navigate life?
Right.
Because I don't
Right.
just, like the kind of resolution where it's like, oh, it is what it is. And like Tammy said, that's kind of the way things never change. It just
Mhm.
feels like it never changes.
Mhm.
And so I struggle with this, and I'm such a Pollyanna, I'm such a silver lining girl. So when things like this happen, I struggle with this idea of like, is this just part of the human existence? This violence that occurs, this racism, the hatred, the living in a place where, although there's a lot of freedoms afforded to us that aren't in other countries, still we're living in a country that was built on racial injustice, violence, supremacy.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, so
so
Mhm.
why are we surprised?
yeah, well, not just surprised, but how do we resolve it within ourselves without being, um, uh, without just throwing our hands up,
Right.
Mhm.
right? It's that line to walk, and I don't even know what it means to walk that line, but that's what comes up for me when stuff like this happens. Like, yeah, like how do we be with it, and then also, understand that it's not okay.
Right. I want to dig a little bit deeper into that part of it, Candace and
Yeah.
Tammy, which is because I think that we don't talk about what that is that we don't want to deal with, right? It's more than this one incident, right? It's the ongoing onslaught and the emotional trauma and re-trauma and re-trauma and over and over again that those of us specifically in the Black community feel when these encounters end with another son, daughter, father, mother, ends up in death.
Yeah.
So, I just wanted, it's a unique experience and it's a historic experience. And from my point of view, f- you know, I totally get it. Like when I heard about this week, there's a part of me that just wanted to just tune it out for a minute
Mm.
Mhm. You know,
because it's just too much. It's like it's too much. It's too much.
it's a lot. But you mentioned something uh which I think is so interesting, which is the historical perspective around this
Yes.
and this trauma.
Mm.
So I don't know if you heard, but in Spain yesterday, they hung a black soccer player in effigy off of one of their biggest bridges in the middle of the city.
No, I did not hear that.
Crazy. So that, like, just hearing that, I was like, what?
Yeah.
They still do that? And then I thought about from a historical standpoint, I was watching this movie on Netflix. I think it's called Mudbound.
Mhm.
Um, so back in the day when they were hanging black men, in some cases black women and kids, like from trees,
Mhm.
and people would be, people are walking down the path because they have to get somewhere and they see bodies hanging from the trees.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And I think about what was happening, like who loved those bodies that were hanging from the tree.
Yeah.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah.
and at some point, do you just become, do you become numb because this is the norm? Like you
Mm.
stop being outraged. Like, I mean, already they were already slaves, so you already had suppressed emotions as it is. Um, but I don't know, Candace. You said, by the way, whether it's your nephews or your sons, it doesn't matter. Like you are gonna want to fight somebody.
Right?
If it's someone in your family,
Right.
like someone's going down. I'm not
Yeah.
waiting for justice. I'm gonna take it into my own hands, and my
Mhm.
kids can visit me in jail
Right?
behind a good cause.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, when I think about like this has been trauma for us for so many generations.
Mm.
And on some level, I am disappointed and I'm a little bit dejected. Like, they're going to protest in Memphis tonight. What's going to change?
Yeah.
Like, I am generally, my personality is like, I take action, like, be proactive. And nothing seems to be working.
Yeah.
Mm.
Nothing seems to be working.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
I wonder too, though, like, we were talking about how, this, there's no way to get around that it is a racial issue,
Yeah.
right? And, even though the police officers are black, that I wonder, and here I go being Pollyanna, silver lining girl. Like
You go.
I wonder if because this situation is um different than what we're used to, because usually it's white police officers.
Right.
And
Right.
I wonder if, part of what might have people have a deeper understanding that this is a police brutality issue is that
Hmm.
it has to do with how we prop up these young men who become police and how we train them, how we uh, set up the police structure in this country, knowing that the police structure started from slave
Mhm.
roots, right?
Yep.
So
Hmm.
even though they were black officers, our police structure has supremacy at its base because it was all about wrangling slaves and chasing slaves, and
Yep.
that's where our police originated from. So whether they're black or not, the issue is our policing in this country is broken.
Yeah. Yeah.
and and just the fact that anyone, no matter what color they are, can be in a uniform and have a weapon and feel like it is in any way okay, especially a number of police officers. So what we find even with the George Floyd case, there were people who were complicit. And
Hmm.
also, there were police officers that were complicit and also involved. So it's like the fact that a number of them can get together, no matter what color they are, and feel like this is okay. I think that this truly speaks to that it is a police brutality problem first.
Mhm.
And
Hmm.
even right, and even though I think racism is at the forefront, and that's a problem that this country has, I think that it really has to start with the police
Right.
in general, no matter what color they are, how they're being trained, and what biases are being set up in their minds. Because we know just because of colorism that even as Black folks, biases can be set up in our minds.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know if I mentioned to you guys, but my brother is a police officer.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
and he came out of the academy. Uh, he graduated in May, and then September 11th happened. So
Mm.
he was in Baltimore. Most of the Baltimore police got called up to New York, and he literally was like left to his own devices, as were the rest of the newly graduated cadets. They
Wow.
didn't get
Mhm.
partners. They didn't get trained. They were riding around alone for the first time. Um, and my brother's he has a unique perspective. I haven't talked to him about like this most recent incident. Um, but his perspective, first of all, he's an outstanding police officer.
Mm.
And we've talked over the years. He just retired last year, by the way. So this is like 25 years of being a police officer. He said, Tammy, 80% of cops are good.
Yeah.
Like they're in this position for the right reason. Like they became police officers for the right reason. They wanted to be of service. Most of them become police officers and go back to their community, like where they
Mhm.
grew up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he said, another 10% have some, they're concerning. Some of their behavior is concerning.
Yeah.
And then there's 10% that are flat out like, how are they even on the police force? They're so emotionally damaged. They're constantly getting reprimanded.
Yeah.
Um, so, it's interesting. Like, I heard somebody say yesterday, like, F the police. And
Mm.
this whole defund the police thing, I was like, what?
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
that is so ridiculous. Like, I'm not mad at the police.
Yeah.
Right.
They protect us, they honor us. Like my son, I've had to call 911 many times, and they're here and they're present. And what can we do? So I'm not mad at the police. I'm mad at the system that is
Yes.
allowing the police
Right.
to keep doing this over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And no amount of
Absolutely.
training. I teach about emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I don't care how much you train somebody on like the tactics
Yeah.
Mm.
and on de-escalation.
Right.
Um, if you don't have emotional intelligence to start with, like a high EQ,
Yes.
Yeah.
no
There you
amount of
go.
training is going to help. Like at the core, you are who you are and you think how you think.
Yeah.
You can't train racist thoughts out of somebody's head,
No.
Right.
No.
right? You can't train brutality out of somebody's head. Like at some point, like, they have to be individually accountable for what they do.
Yeah.
Um, so that's what I'm mad at. Like, why are
That,
these guys like, has this happened before, by the way? These 5 cops, have they ever done this to anybody else before and they're still on the force?
there was an article I was reading that a couple of them, I think they have had some issues, like
Right.
ongoing issues with some brutality and stepping over the line.
Right.
So that's what I'm mad at, Candace, which is like,
Yeah.
why are they still there?
Well,
Yeah, I know. I totally agree with that. I hear that. And maybe, we talk about defund the police, but maybe it's fund the police with emotional intelligence training,
Yes, fund
right?
the police. What? Okay.
Like get some training in there that is actually, psychology, intellect, emotion based, so that they
Or
can work
therapy.
this
How
stuff.
about just give
Yeah,
them therapy?
right.
I
Yeah, no,
like
absolutely.
that. I
And the
like
thing
that.
is that, I believe that that's true probably for most industries, but because they're in such
Hmm.
and this could, any first responders this could apply to, right? Because
Right, right.
it's constant trauma that they deal with.
Hmm.
It's constant trauma. Like you're getting called at any moment, you're going to see a dead body. At any moment, you're going to meet a rape victim. At any moment, there's going to be a house burning down.
Right.
So why wouldn't there be a full structure set up for
Hmm.
their care psychologically and emotionally?
Absolutely.
Woo! I
Maybe we
like
And
it.
just
why,
solved the problem.
I
right?
know,
And why
right?
is there still stigma around it? Why is there still this thing where, they're a little bit afraid to say that they had to go see a therapist or that they
Well,
had to, get psychological help?
well,
Why
that's a
does that
whole.
even still exist anywhere, right?
Well, that's a
I
whole,
know
that
we're
I like
about to
that
take a
thread.
break, but I want to, when we
Yeah.
come back, Brian, I want to talk about this topic a little bit longer.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I
Yeah.
think we just pulled something that I think we really need to talk more about. So we're going to stay on this topic, everybody. We're going to take a quick, real short break, and we'll be back with more this morning with Soulivity. We'll be back in about 30 seconds this time.
Mhm.
6 years ago, when I started Soulivity, my vision was to support everyone in improving their life through the discovery of their passion and purpose, so they could become the best version of themselves. To battle fear and ignorance and create a better world today. Get inspired to live your passion and purpose. Visit Soulivity.com now.
And good morning. This is Brian Wesley Johnson, and welcome back to This Morning with Soulivity with my very special friends and co-hosts, Candace Harper and Tammy Gaines. Hey, ladies.
Hey.
Hey.
We're talking about the latest incident with police that ended with the death of Tyree Nichols in Memphis, Tennessee, and we're talking about uh, the fact that I think we all kind of agreed that we understand that the majority of police are okay, right? I mean, that they have good intentions, that they're out to serve and protect,
Yeah.
and that there are a minority of police officers that continue a history of quote unquote modern policing that has been problematic, to say the least.
Yeah.
I just want to kind of bring up some quick facts as we move into this next round. So, policing in America really started during the colonial period. And again, like most, like even more modern day police systems in cities and states and counties, a lot of these folks were like just off the street. I mean, they were untrained, they were volunteers, they were elected by like the local public, and that there wasn't like this real rigorous selection process,
Yeah.
or there could be bias based upon the who was voting for these people to be put in power. And that continued all the way until, even more modern times, 18th and 19th centuries. uh Candace, you brought about the whole thing around the night watch patrols,
Mhm.
where they go out and get slaves and bring them back. um the Wild West that a lot of people don't talk about the locally appointed sheriffs and deputies and militias and all that. I mean, all that's part of the history of modern policing. And
Mhm.
though some things have gotten better, some things have gotten worse because of the things that we were talking about in the last segment, which is, where's the real emotional and psychological support for the police officers that are serving and protecting us every single day? I mean,
Yeah.
they're seeing horrors and stuff that none of us could ever imagine that we would see. And I would also say, where's the more rigorous selection process about who becomes a police officer in a local community? So
Brian, to just bring some levity to this, immediately what pops into my mind is like Blazing Saddles and
oh yeah.
some of these other some of these other spoof,
Yes.
it's like, grab your rifles, boys.
You're right.
We're gonna get it. Let's get together and get us
Yep. Exactly.
So when I think about the early, militia, the people that are the foundation of our police force today, it was like, who has a rifle in time?
Yeah. Right.
Right. Right.
But to your to circle back to this conversation around psychological support, there is none.
Yeah, exactly.
So when I remember when my brother first he shot somebody. He
Mm,
I don't know if you guys
mm.
have seen The Wire, but that was him. Like, he was The Wire,
Oh, oh,
Yeah.
my
undercover
heart.
drug
Oh,
detective,
oh.
chasing perps across roofs in Baltimore,
Mm.
jumping
Wow.
from building to building.
Yeah.
And I remember I was home, so I live here in Jersey, and he's in Baltimore. I was making dinner, and the doorbell rings, and it was him. And I
Mm.
Mm.
was like, "What are you do? Oh my God, what are you doing here?" He's like, "I needed to talk." So he
Wow.
came in, and he said, "Look, my man had to drive 3.5 hours to
Wow.
talk to someone he trusted that he could like let these feelings go." And he said like he had just shot his first perp. Like, I'm not, listen, y'all, you know me. I'm not a trained therapist.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't have
Right.
any
Right.
formal training. I'm not a police officer. I'm assuming like they have, people that specialize in like what they see. But he
Yeah.
literally
Yeah.
just wanted to talk. He He told me the whole thing would happen. Like, I felt so my heart was breaking for him because he was so upset, but at the end of the day I was like, did he deserve it? You know, he's like, yeah, he had his
Right.
gun pointed at me. So
Wow.
I was like, you know, kill or be killed. This is the line of work you're in, but
Right.
that always stayed with me that he had no place to go. Like he couldn't there was nobody that he could talk to in Baltimore. So he
Yeah.
drove to New Jersey to talk to his sister.
Wow.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
I
that
do
speaks volumes.
it does speak volumes. So that's why I said like maybe we just solved the problem. It's about like raising police officers and those that manage them and oversee them, raising their emotional intelligence so that they think as a human. Because what we're going to see on this video tonight
Oh,
is a complete lack of humanity.
Yeah.
yeah.
Police officer, stranger on the street, like you
Right.
would never stand by and let that happen.
No.
Like
Right.
what happened to their humanity? Maybe
Well,
it's gone because they have no EQ.
well,
Yeah.
again, part of this whole thing is that especially over the last, you know, 2 or 3 decades, there's been a militarization of the police, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where even little small town police, you know, systems were able to get military hardware or military style hardware. You
Mm.
know, I don't know of a police district now that doesn't have a quick reaction force. I mean, they had the quick reaction force in Uvalde. Well, they didn't do anything, but
That was a
um,
mess. Let's not hold that up as
yeah,
any sort of good
yeah,
response.
right. Which is, but what that's, but again, in the midst of all this, that's a piece of it, right?
Yeah.
Because you were talking about that. Where is their humanity? Where's the training about the humanistic part of being in law enforcement?
Yeah.
And, you know, their job was to rush in and save those children,
Yeah.
and they didn't do it,
th- Yeah. That
right?
that that actually I actually cried over that
Yeah,
story. Those are
Yeah.
right,
children that are scared.
right,
Where is
right,
your humanity? That could have been your kid in there.
right. And again, in this instance with Tyree Nichols, where was the humanity? I mean, it's a cycle of, and I, you know, biases for me is too soft of a word. Um, um, I think it includes um inbred racism, not necessarily from race to race, but police to race. How police are trained to react to certain races of people.
Mm-hmm.
And the humanity that the police saw in that young man at 29 was non-existent. They did not see him as a human being. They only saw him as a threat that needed to be beat and exterminated.
Mm.
But why?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
Well, I mean, it definitely goes back, not to interrupt you, Tammy, it definitely goes back to, you know, when we can't, you know, I'm a big believer in, you know, how do you mitigate even just the smallest of conflicts or issues with other people? It's like, you know, that willingness to be able to see, you know, God, universe, life energy, love energy, whatever you want to call it, a source of love, a higher power within another person. Like we, you know, to be able to value another person when you look at them, it has to start with yourself. It has to come from within. And, you know, Tammy, you said the thing about the Uvalde cops uh, lacking humanity and not being able to go in and save children. But you know, they were standing out there as children who were scared, and that's not defending what
mm,
they did.
Right. Ooh. Ooh,
Oh,
That's
nice.
what,
that's
Nice. That's
good. That's
nice.
good.
That's
Hmm.
good.
right? That's
Yeah.
what we all are. We are children who are scared, and when we don't actually let ourselves see each other that way, and there's a lot of things that teach us not to, right? You know, particularly just in our American culture, because I think that the violence in this culture is not specific to any race.
Right.
But you know, it's that willingness to look at another person and be able to see God energy, love energy, but we have to be able to start with ourselves. And when we don't have that, it's like you said, a lack of humanity, or just an inability to do the thing that would actually advance rather than destroy.
You know, I love this. I love this new thread that we're pulling, because the first thought that came in my mind was, while we're focusing on this being a policing thing, it's really at a higher level a humanity thing, a spiritual thing where we all see each other, right?
Yeah.
Growing up in Detroit, Detroit was named every year the murder capital of the United States,
Mhm.
right? And people who lived there with me during my development years as a young adult and then adult, we all knew what Detroit was. And Detroit was a city that in many ways was, oppressed.
Mm.
Mhm.
I mean, things like people don't even understand. Like when I was a kid, there were resources within the city that you could count on, including things like grocery stores, as simple as a grocery store that was nearby, or hardware stores, or that kind of thing. Later in, I think in the late 80s, 90s, there wasn't a single major food chain in the city. Even though there was a economic reason for it to be there.
Yeah.
So people who get oppressed get pissed, and they go into more of a survival kind of mode. And so are we seeing those people? Are we supporting those people? Are we making it a political wedge, right? And
Mhm.
blaming people for race instead of actually just seeing them as human beings and needing support and love and acknowledgement and validation?
Yeah.
I mean, this it's got to stop. I mean,
You know,
oh,
I
it's gotta
saw
stop.
I took my daughter to see Avatar,
Mm.
which we
Mm,
saw. I forgot how old that movie is, like 20 years old.
yeah, almost.
And I saw it 20 years ago. And I was like, all right, like this is a good movie. Like he did a good job. It's entertaining. It's engaging. And then they re-released it for one day in November,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
we went to go see it. I have goosebumps right now. That movie was ahead of its time.
yes,
Like
Yeah.
20 years ago, I did not receive the message,
right,
Yeah.
because all of this wasn't going on. Like all of this police brutality and war, like a lot of this wasn't going on 20 years ago. Anyway, when I saw it in November, I literally was feverishly taking notes during the movie because the fundamental message is I see you.
see you.
I
Yeah.
see you for who you are.
You are, period.
I
That's
see
what
you
it
for
is.
how you are. I see
Right,
all aspects of you.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then we went and saw the second one like in December, and I was like, this is so deep. I just feel like they should make it free. Because
That's a
if
good
everybody went to go see like this free Avatar, they might actually be like, wow,
Yeah.
that whole movie is about like your core of love
Right,
Absolutely.
right.
and
Absolutely.
our potential to love and our ability to allow ourselves to be loved. Um, so to when we come back to this like latest incidents of police beating somebody to death, I just wonder. Well, remember I said earlier, like
Mm.
nothing changed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just not to listen. I am a glass half full person. Like Candy, you don't know me as well as like Brian does, but there's always a bright side. We could always
right.
figure something out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
This one, I'm not optimistic
No.
because it requires people to take a hard look at themselves, and most people aren't willing to do that.
Yeah.
It's too scary.
And I agree with that. It is a very, very scary thing. But I also think that the biggest, most revolutionary changes come from the worst circumstances. And so, you know, for me, and that's probably why we gel, Tammy, because I'm silver lining girl too. I'm like, there's always got to be a good way.
There's
But
something good about this. Yeah, it burned down, but at least our dinner's cooked.
yeah, like exactly. Like there's always something to outline.
We can rebuild. We don't have to.
We're
Yeah,
good. We're good. Get
there's
that
always
chicken.
there's always something to alchemize out of it, and I think that, you know, like I was saying before, like I think because you know, we have a situation here where everyone was Black. I think that is what is there for all of us to be able to see is that this is, like we were talking about earlier, a deeper emotional psychological issue, and this conversation about being able to see each other's humanity and see each other, like in the Avatar movie. I think that it leaves spaces and openings for people to stop stigmatizing the idea of just, you know, loving yourself, getting the help you need, asking for support, not feeling like, you know, you're on your own and trying to figure out and navigate other people and relationships and life in general. Like, you know, so many of us are so stuck in, you know, I'm on my own trying to survive in a place that doesn't want me to survive. I had a young Black man send me a DM on my business page the other day, and he was kind of half hitting on me, but also half like reaching out for help. And what I often do, because it happens occasionally, where I'll have like a young Black man, let's say in his 20s or 30s, and you know, mama still got it, so they think I'm younger than I am, but they, you know, they'll hit on me, but also part of them wants some sort of support and help.
Right.
And when I responded to him in love, like obviously I'm not available, however, if you have a question about relationships. And he ended up opening up to me saying that sometimes he doesn't want to live. Right? So
Wow.
that opened up a conversation where I could give him some support around that. And I think, you know, that's where we need to get to. We need to stop minimizing and stigmatizing what it means to talk about, you know, love and loving yourself, and quit treating it like it's just for children or that's just hearts and flowers. Because there are men and women out here who are in these jobs. There are men and women out here who are just, you know, carrying around and
Right.
no one ever said to them, you are valuable and important. And they had no
Oof.
source of, I am valuable and important, that I am of source energy, I am of God. And as soon as I start to understand that and believe that, then I get to express my humanity. Like it all comes down to that. And so I think that when something like this so major happens, it opens up an opportunity for us to have like this conversation we're having now. And it also puts people who are usually unconscious, it you know, puts something in front of them so that consciousness can be um uh, something that they seek. Even if I'm completely unconscious walking around, something horrible happens in front of me, and I have an opportunity to say, you know, God help, or what can I do? Where can I go? Who can I
Right.
talk to?
Right.
Everyone won't necessarily heed that call, but
Mhm.
without these kinds of occurrences, there'd be no reason to seek out love. There'd be no reason to seek out support.
Wow. I love this thread too, because I think that
Mhm.
that you know, my grandparents used to talk to me all the time. I'm sure you guys have heard this. God never just knocks you down.
Yeah.
He says a little whisper, and then he taps you on the shoulder, and then he, gets a little louder, and then he shakes you a little bit, and then he knocks you down, right?
Yeah.
And I think that our country specifically has been, you know, wanting to move in a certain direction where those things become the norm that you were talking about, Candace, where we see each other,
Mhm.
where this whole machismo, masculine individualism
Survival.
of survival, that you can't, you're not worth it unless you show that you've done it on your own, which is a complete myth, by the way. Nobody ever does it alone.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Um that if you don't do that, you're worthless,
Yeah.
right? And that you're weak, right? And that has to change. That literally has to change. And I think you're right. I think that this is what this is all about. Listen, we're going to take a quick break. I want to keep on this. But I think what I want to do is, I mean, Candace, you talked something about earlier, we were offline talking about, what are some of the ways that we can deal with this? What are some of the ways that we can support our communities in dealing with this and moving forward? So why don't we talk about that in the next segment?
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So we'll be right back in about 60 seconds, everybody. You can find all the Satonic products at our Go shop on Soulivity at go.soulivity.com now. Shop for beauty products, skincare, hair care. It is all there at the Go shop. Go shop Soulivity. Hey, we want to remind you that coming up at 12 noon today is another great episode with Soulivity TV host D'Angelo Thompson with Gratitude is a Journey. And this week he is joined by hair and makeup phenomenal makeup artist Angela Lynn Ware. I cannot wait for this. Watch Gratitude is a Journey every Friday at 12 noon with the replay at 7 p.m. You can join D'Angelo as he explores the unseen and seen blessings of gratitude every week. Yay, D'Angelo.
He's awesome.
Yeah.
He's so talented.
Oh my God. And he makes it look so easy too.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, he and I actually met working together, Tammy. We worked on the Wendy Williams show.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I was the art director and he was the makeup artist, and we just gelled right away. I love him.
Oh, that's amazing. Where's I can't wait to meet everybody in person.
Right.
I hope we can figure that out.
So everybody, we were talking about the tragedy of Tyree Nichols in Memphis, and we all had our feelings about it. I think the feelings ranged from rage to depression to shock, anxiety. I mean, when these things happen, I think people across the spectrum, specifically in the Black community, but I also think across America, because it's on national news, right? And international news. I was watching BBC yesterday, and they were covering this story.
Yeah.
But I wanted to kind of turn to make sure that our listeners get something. I'll say that it's positive, but I'll say that it's of compassion, right? Because we're all dealing with this together. We're all going through this together. And, I tend to believe that it takes a village to get through these tragedies and to learn and grow from them. So I'm reaching out to, the two of you and our audience. I mean, if you have things around how do we move through this? How do we support each other? Including the police, right? And the families of, the victims of police. How do we get through this? So, Candace, I know you have some thoughts on this.
Well, I mean, I definitely, we talked a little bit like, the how to, right? So what comes to mind first is, just thinking in terms of, I think Tammy mentioned earlier about, 20 years ago, these things weren't going on. And And I think that what it really is that 20 years ago, so much of this wasn't in our consciousness because we have the internet, right? So we have
Right.
access
Mhm.
to so much more information, constant information, whether it
Body
be,
cams.
Mhm.
yeah, body cams, and everybody's got a camera, and we just see so much more than we ever have before, right? So, when we think in terms of like, as a person who is personally removed, even though, as a human, I have the human connection of being able to watch it and empathize and feel and emote. Someone who's not directly affected, I think the way to sort of manage what we're experiencing, because it is a trauma, even if you're not directly affected, just watching other humans go through this kind of pain, is first, when it comes to the doomsday scroll and all of the information, I think the concept is minimize consumption, maximize contribution, meaning that you want to, yes, know what's going on in the world. You want to have a sense of, what's happening around you. But the idea is to put way more of our focus and energy into how do I contribute to something that works, rather than continually consuming something that doesn't work, because it doesn't
Amen.
work for people to be out there getting beat to death. That does not work,
Amen. Amen.
right? And the way to start with that is to always go back to the self. Like, am I generating love for self? Am I doing the things that need to be done in order to care for myself so that I can be healthy enough to care for others? And I know it's the old adage of the oxygen mask, but whether it's my own children in my house, my partners, my spouse, my family, in my direct community, my closest friends, am I generating enough for myself that I can then take care of others? Because it all starts with each of us individually making that choice to understand our value so that we can then value others.
Mm. Mm.
Hmm.
And so I want to once again thank you for joining in to This Morning with Something. Because we can just drop the mic on that one.
Yeah, you know what? I didn't say a word. I was like, I can't follow. The show is over. Thanks so much. There's no following that. That was
I know,
definitely a
right?
mic drop.
Like,
It was definitely a mic
yeah,
drop.
what she said.
Yeah, what
Tammy goes,
happened
ditto.
was, yeah, exactly. I was definitely like, yep, what she said. What she
We're
said.
all on the
That's
same
good.
page. Y'all would have said the same
Uh,
Um,
go ahead, Tammy. I just,
yeah. Well, obviously, there's no following that. Like, that was a mic drop.
yeah.
I can just like I'll share a personal experience. I asked my daughter last night, my 16-year-old, did you hear about what happened? And
thing.
she said, yes. And I said, how do you feel about it? She was like, the same way I feel about every, person that gets killed by the police.
Yeah.
She said, I'm just afraid. She
Mm.
gets her license in March.
Yeah.
And I said to her, like, I was like, I'll tell you what I told Shane, which is if you get pulled over for any reason, be respectful, do what they say, and if you feel like it's about to go sideways because your instinct will kick in, then like start videotaping.
Yeah.
But the unfortunate thing is to have that conversation in the first place.
Yeah.
So in an effort to have a more tangible, some more tangible solutions for people that are like feeling traumatized. Um, boy, part of me wants to say like, don't watch the video. Like, I haven't
Yeah.
decided. I have not decided if I want, like, what will watching that video do for me?
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, it's not going to do anything positive. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a re-traumatization.
yeah, I don't want to. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like videotaping the worst moment of your life and watching it over again just for fun.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, it's not. So that's the first thing I would ask people to do is like really sit. Look, the video's coming out tonight around
Right.
6:30 or 7. You have all day to decide whether or not watching that video enhances your life and supports your emotional well-being or if it doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you can't see a path to something positive by watching the video, then I think don't watch it because we've all seen that video before.
Yeah.
Like George Floyd was enough for me. That's why I'm not
Right.
sure I'm going to watch this. Like that was it was enough.
More than enough.
And all the other videos of I'm drawing a blank, Brian. The guy in the Bronx who got shot like 21
Oh,
times coming out of
oh,
Oman, something with an A.
yeah. Oh my God, yeah.
I was like, I don't. The whole world saw that video. So
Yeah.
anyway, that's the first thing. I'm not sure I'm gonna watch the video. I'm not sure any of us should watch the video.
Yeah.
Um, and by the way, just from like a psychological standpoint, if we all watch that video, does that encourage other cops to do this because they get so much airtime?
Wow.
I mean, the
Like
crazy
we're
thing,
amplifying the crazy is what we're doing.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I love that you said that, Tammy, because it really is about how we increase our consciousness, right? So the more we feed into it, and the more we like energize, and I call it violence porn. It's like the more that's what's in the consciousness. So of course your daughter's afraid, because when we see this, how can any of us not be afraid, right? Because that's what we're seeing all the time, and then it sticks in our mind, and then we start to feel like that's just how it is. But in the grand
Right.
scheme of life, that's not just how it is, but the fact that these things are happening, that's what we don't want to be happening. But that doesn't mean that 99% of the time that's what's happening. 90 whatever the percentage is, what's normally happening is people get pulled over, they get a ticket, or they don't. But if we're in the consciousness of I'm afraid, I'm afraid, I'm afraid, I'm afraid, it's like what we fear manifests.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it's
I
so
think the other piece, Candace, which is important, is talking about it.
yeah. Yeah.
Like letting your feelings air out, because I think a lot of people aren't talking about this, which is interesting. We're talking about it today.
It
I
was when
talked
I
about
went
it
to
with Mhm.
I was just gonna say, when I went to look it up, it was way down on the
Yeah, it's kind of doesn't that speak volumes? It's buried. It's not the lead story. Like
yeah,
sending tanks to Ukraine is the lead story. And
yeah,
oh, by
Right.
the way, another black guy got beat down by cops and died.
yeah.
Right.
So I just think um I guess the second thing is like decide if you're gonna watch the video. The second thing is find a way to talk about it so you're not carrying that around with you,
Yeah,
whatever that is.
yeah.
As I'm listening to both of you, and thank you for the words and thoughts that you're talking about, because I completely concur with both of you. I'm just remembering my parents' practice and what they would tell people about their mental and emotional health. And that is, it is up to you to get the support that you need.
Mm,
And that's being courageous and bold. And that if you don't take care of yourself, nobody will.
it's true.
And so, to those police officers that are out here dealing with emotional pain and psychological pain, you don't have to tell anybody about you going to get some therapy. Just go get the therapy that you need.
Mm,
It's
Um,
so hard though, Brian, for those
yeah.
guys.
yeah,
It is not like you or I making a therapy
But
session.
no, believe me. I mean, I resemble that remark. I mean, luckily I had a
stigma.
support system that said, it's okay, that it's okay for you to do this, and that you can do it in private. You don't even need to tell us that you're doing it, but just go do it. Because if you don't, it just builds and builds and builds and builds and builds, and it's like a volcano where
Mm,
at some point that emotion is going to erupt in whatever, and you have no idea what's going to happen. It can be violent, it can be down into depression, it could be,
It could be
it could,
numbness, by the
yeah,
way. It could just be
numbness,
numb.
it could create an addiction. You do not know, but handle that and understand that it is okay to do so, that it's okay to do so, and that you can start at any given moment. But the main thing is that you get the support and you love yourself that deeply enough that you can grow and come out of that, and that the grass is definitely greener on the other side.
yeah.
And so that's what I was kind of thinking about, that I think that especially men aren't taught to get support. They're taught to figure it out, right? And they're not taught to ask. They're not taught to, deal with their emotions. They're not taught any of this stuff. And I'm not saying that this is an excuse, but it's just the truth. And we've got to get out of what I think a lot of people call, toxic masculinity, because it can lead to things like what happened with Tyree Nichols, and that is people not seeing each other, and that it ends in this kind of experience. And tragedy. It's just, so it's got to end. So I just want to say that people, listen, get the support that you need, get the help that you need. I think it's part of just being a human being, and at a deeper level, it's also being part of just being a conscious creator of your life. And I completely support that. And you've got some people here on the line that do that kind of thing with people. They support people in having a better life. And so, just want you to know that this is a resource, and that there's tons of resources out there for everybody to go to in your in your own space and in your own privacy. So wow, great show, y'all.
That was a good show.
Great. It was a heavy topic. I was like, I don't know if I should even put that out there, but I love where we landed.
Yeah, and it's good, like you said, it's good to talk it out. So I think that was a great topic to choose.
Absolutely. So, as I mentioned before, we're always here to help empower people on Soulivity.com. This is one way that we do it, and we have some great people here. Candace, I know that you've got something that you're offering people right now. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I have my curriculum, Love Life Skills for Leaders. I do it one-on-one, a 12-week intensive. And I have, I think, 3 spots open right now if anybody wants to do one-on-one coaching. And if you're a Soulivity listener, you use the promo code Soulivity50 when you get in touch with me for the consultation. And if we choose to go forward and work together, you get half the price off.
Wow.
Of the registration. Also and I have a group that I'm building right now, a club membership, which is going to be a year-long membership with the same curriculum, but more time to suss it out and a community to work with. And so even for that, if you choose to go into the group coaching, you get 50% off, Soulivity 50.
Wow.
You'd be crazy not to work with you.
I know, right?
Listen, I'm getting my weekly therapy just on these podcasts. I'm saving money, y'all. It's free.
And Tamara, we got some exciting news coming to the Soulivity platform. Tammy Talks is coming at you in February 6th. Tammy, talk a little bit about this show.
Yeah, I'll tell you where the history came. And I know that you both have had this experience. When you gather as a family, you typically gather in the kitchen, right? And you cook together and you eat together and you talk about whatever you want to talk about. So my idea is to bring everybody into the kitchen to sit at the table.
Hello.
And our conversations, though, are totally focused on your evolution, like your personal growth, your raising your consciousness about yourself. The conversation that we were having today, like about emotional intelligence. So generally, it's about resilience, but it's really going to be done in the context of a very casual conversation, but real. So I'm excited.
Y'all don't even know. It's going to be the bomb.
It's gonna be live. It's gonna be live, y'all.
Live, right?
and your subtitle, Tammy, is 3 things that I absolutely live for: gab, grub, and growth.
Exactly.
That's the trifecta right there. So
I got to figure out how to do a cook. I'm open to suggest. How do I do a cooking show on a podcast? I don't know, but I'm working on it.
Yeah, what comes to mind is description. Because people
Right.
love, like, you know, like if you're cooking or if you've cooked something and you describe it and talk about it, yeah, that you could definitely do it. If you need
Absolutely.
any support.
All right.
Absolutely.
I'm in.
Oh man. Remember, everybody, please follow us on social media and join our mailing list by visiting our This Morning Soulivity site. And on behalf of all of us, I want to say thank you for joining us for another episode of This Morning with Soulivity. Girls, I'm already like, is it over? It's over
That's
already.
it.
That's so fast.
Oh,
It's such a great way to start the day, though. I have a jam-packed day, but I love starting it with you both.
It's right back at you, sister.
Yeah,
Right back at you.
100%.
Listen, everybody, we hope that you come back and join us every weekday at 8 a.m. Eastern, or you can listen to the rebroadcast of this at 11 a.m. Eastern for all of you out on the West Coast. And until next time, keep having real conversations, even the difficult ones, but with some passion and purpose, and create a life full of high quality living today. So until next time, for all of us here, just want to say bye.
This work is subject to copyright owned by Affinity Global LLC. Any reproduction or republication of all or part of this is expressly prohibited unless Affinity Global LLC has explicitly granted its prior written consent. All other rights reserved.